Today I'm going to give you a look at how we live full-time off-grid. It's not going to be a technical how to wire a solar charge controller or something like that. What it's going to be is how we use power, how we get power, and the overhaul we did after buying the boat. So if you'd like a peek into how we're able to live without a big power cord coming into the home, then let's do this. There are three definitions: watts, amps, and volts. Watts are the standard measurement of power, specifically the rate at which electricity is transferred. Watts equals volts times amps. So volts and amps go together to make up the total power transference, which is measured in watts. Volts is the electric potential difference. Really what that means, at least to me, is how strong is the electricity flowing through. And then amps is the total amount of electricity. How I can think about it, or how I think about it, okay, and you can tell me if this makes sense to you, is in terms of water, where volts is the strength of the stream, right? So in a river, is how fast is the current flowing? Is it a river? Is it a fast raising river where the current's really, really flowing, or is it a pond, right? The difference between those two is volts, the flow. The strength of the flow, again, the electrical potential difference. Amps is the total amount flowing through, right? So amps is volume. Is it a stream or is it a river? Is it a puddle or is it a pond? And then again, the total of those two, so strength of the flow, amount of the water, you multiply those two together, you got power, which is watts.
I think that makes a little bit of sense.
A little bit of sense, clear as mud. There's three different ways to think about how to go about living off-grid. There's usage of power. What do you actually need power for? What do you use it for? Sources of power, and then how do you combine those two, right? How do you store it? How do you make sure that power is available when and where you want it, and in what format you want it in? We're going to start off with uses of power. What do we use power for? To do that, we're going to give you a sense of how much power a few different items around the house take. How are we going to measure this?
So we have the multimeter, and we're going to turn it on to amps.
Okay.
And then I think this is the positive wire, or whatever this thing is.
Yep.
And it says that there is nothing.
There's no amps. Why are there no amps?
Because the fan is not on.
Fan's not on. Okay.
So on low, it says that there are 13, if you can see that, if that you can.
Point
13.
13.
And then on high, it is 0.19.
Let's try your sound machine.
Got to put it on.
Nope, that's which one? You got to do the one where the wires split. You can't measure the positive and negative together.
Right here.
Yep.
It is like 10 or 12.
10 or 12. Okay.
And then on high, it's like 36.
Lastly, a phone charging.
Phony charging.
What are you seeing?
It's 17. No, it's 16 and 17. It's 16 and 17.
Cruder method for the big stuff. The net difference in our battery bank, which is jumping around based on how much solar we're getting at the second. The fan. Karen, would that look like difference to you?
It went up to 40.
Looks like about 42 to 52 to me.
I agree.
Okay. I'm gonna go down and turn on a couple of kitchen appliances. All right, you just turned it on.
It's going up to. It went up to 85.
Did it go down to -85? Is there a negative there?
Yeah.
Holy cow. So it was positive, what, 50 to -85?
Yeah.
Is it still there?
It's at -50 now.
Okay. So that's probably using maybe even 190 amps.
So that's a lot more than even the blue fan.
That's a lot more than even the blue fan. All right, I'm going to turn on the Breville to air fry.
Oh no.
Oh no, okay, you got it?
We're at 48. We're at positive 48.
So about 50. Negative?
Negative 90. Negative. It was negative 100 for a second.
So negative 100 and positive 50. It's like 150 amps.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Okay, another thing that is important. One is the flow, but then two, or the power, how much wattage is something using, but for how long. So one of those little fans that was pulling less than an amp, let's say it was pulling 0.2 of an amp, if we have that on all day, literally 24 hours, that's 4.8 amp hours over the course of a day, whereas the kettle might be pulling 100 amps, but if we only have it on for 6 minutes in a day, 100 times 0.1, that's only 10 amp hours, right? So the fan over the course of the day uses a little bit less than half. Makes sense, right? So that's why we leave a light, or we want to turn lights off when we're not using them, even though they only pull a little bit of power. No reason to have it on when you don't need it. Two other things, or one thing, refrigeration. We didn't measure that. We have a refrigerator, we have a Dometic. Between the two of those, it's a little less than 10 amps, maybe call it 8 amps of just usage all the time. When you combine that with just things that are bound to happen, lights coming on and off, the bilge pump cycling on, the water pump cycling on when we use the water, etc., we use about 300 amp hours a day.
That's a lot. Or it sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot. It's a lot more than some boats use. It's a lot less than other boats use. So it's about 300. And then baking bread in the toaster oven, turning the coffee kettle on is on top of that, right? So we got to get about 300 a day. And then if we have more, great. There's more stuff we can use. How do we supply that? There's 4 methods. You want to guess what the 4 power supply methods are?
Okay. Generator, shore power, solar. What is the last one?
Alternators. Our 2 diesel engines have an alternator that can supply power. Not only keeps the starter battery charged, but it also can go to the house battery bank. We don't use that one very much. I'll talk about that one. But those are the 4. You got it.
Okay, I got 3 of them.
You got 3 of them. Shore power we hope to not need. That's the whole point of living off the grid, and we haven't. Solar is our main bread and butter. We know we want to power this boat with solar. We inherited 860 watts. So you think about that is at peak, they would have 860 watts of power coming in. We knew we wanted more. We didn't know how much more. We thought about doing a solar arch back over the dinghy davits. But we just decided to max out. We got this big hard top. We decided to max out. And we were able to get 8 200 watt panels up there. So we got 1,600 watts of solar at peak. That has supplied all of our needs in all the time that we've been off the dinghy. We've been in sunny climates, but we have not been in summer, and so it's supplying all of our power needs.
And you said since we've been off dinghy.
Since we've been off dinghy, since we've been off dock. There's a third variable here. The sun shines on its own time, but Megan wants coffee in the morning on her time. So how do we combine those two?
Having a lot of solar charge in the batteries.
The batteries, storage of power. So we inherited 1,080 amp hours of AGMs. AGMs you do not want to get below 50% charge, so that 1,800, or sorry, 1,080, what's half of 1,080?
540.
540, exactly. Right there, we really only have about 540 useful amp hours, and if there's a cloudy day coming or rain coming, you don't even want to use that because you know you want to get them back up. And so really the usable life oftentimes can be even less than 540. We replace those with 1,000 amp hours of lithium batteries, which besides the technology differences, which I'm not going to go into here because I can't, two key things I'll draw out. The voltage output stays much more consistent even as it drains. Leaving that aside, they can take a much deeper draw. So you can take them all the way down to even like 10% charge. So what is 10% of 1,000?
100.
100, right. You can take them all the way down to 100. So that leaves 900 amp hours of usable power out of those batteries. And then they don't mind if you don't bring them back up to 100% over days, if not weeks. So really, even though it's 1,000 amp hours versus 1,080 amp hours of the AGM, we have so much more better functional peace of mind with the lithium batteries. And then how do we get at that power, particularly the coffee kettle plugs in. And so the battery bank's at 12 volts. What makes the 12 volts go from 12 to 120?
I do not know.
The inverter.
The inverter.
The inverter is what enables the power outlets to work.
Okay. I still don't really understand that.
So the little plugs, the little USB plugs that we have, that like we can charge our phones in and whatever else, and that all the lights work off of, autopilot works off of, the wind gauge, most of the Bose systems, those run straight off 12 volts. So they're drawing power straight from the batteries. But if we want to change the voltage of that, so the batteries are putting out, they actually put out at about 13.5, but call it 12. If we want to draw more, that's where the inverter comes in.
So then that pulls more out of the battery than it was generally giving off?
Well, right, so it's pulling the stream, the electrical potential difference, the volts is 120 versus 12. So at the same amperage, at the same amount of energy, it would pull much more quickly. And we saw the amps were huge of the toaster oven.
Yes, very big.
Right. So yes, it can drain the batteries very quickly to use stuff like that. We had a 2,000 watt inverter. We put in a Victron 3,000 watt inverter. What's the difference? Well, I can point out one thing. You remember when we had the kettle on and it was about 100 amps? And we had the toaster oven, which was even more, but let's just call it 100 amps, okay? So how much is that in watts? So 100 times 12 coming out of the battery. What's 100 times 12?
1,200.
1,200. And now if we do two of those, so one for the kettle and one for the toaster oven, what's 1,200 plus 1,200?
2,400.
2,400. So we would not be able to do those two things together with a 2,000 watt inverter, but we can with the 3,000 watt inverter, and we have. It's called breakfast in the morning. Now, I know there are old salts out there who would say it's ridiculous for you to be wanting to use that kind of power on a boat with land-based appliances. Well, we do. What I would say to that is happy wife, happy life. So it is nice not to have to stress about, being able to make toast and coffee at the same time in the morning. What's been going well? The lithium batteries, I love them. They've been great. The solar has been good. It has literally provided 100% of the power in all of the time that we've been off the dock. We've not had to use the alternator, and we have not had to use the generator for power. So that's been great. The inverter is also great. I gave you the example of being able to have multiple things on. Inverter's been doing great. What hasn't been so great? So the solar has covered all of our needs. That said, we have 1,600 watts of solar, and we don't get that much. Even at a peak, no sun, no clouds, not too hot, sun directly overhead, I get maybe 75% of that. I thought that was just okay, maybe that's normal, But then I've met multiple cruisers out there who are sitting right next to me and getting, in those peak conditions, getting 100% of what the specs of their solar panels say. So even though we haven't needed it, I would like to have full usage of this all 1600 watts. I don't know if that's the panel themselves. I don't know if that's something to do with the wiring, the length of wiring, etc. I do know that it's not making it to the solar chargers. So it's nothing downstream of that, which is not that far from the panels. Anyway, I don't know. I need to troubleshoot that more, but we do not get the full rated value of those panels. The alternators, I haven't used them much, but when I do, when I've tried them out, I don't get much out of them when I've tried it. Yeah.
Why do we even need the alternators? And the solar to be 100% of what it says it is? Why can't we just get most of the power out of the solar, and if we need more, we can run the generator?
We can. It's all backup. You're right, we haven't needed it. But, you know, it's also been very sunny where we've been, and I'd like to, I'd just like to get the full rated amount. What's next? Like I just mentioned, I would like for there to be less. I'd like to put more on the solar, which means I'd like for there to be less for the generator to do. I have a couple of things that run off of 220 volts, which is what the generator outputs, so they run straight off the generator. The main thing that does that is the water maker. I would like the water maker to run off of 110 so that it runs off of the inverter, off of the house bank. The main motor there, and I'd have to swap the motor out. It runs off 220. I could swap it out to run off of 210. The main reason I would like to do that is just for less for the generator to do, less wear and tear on the generator, but even more so when we're out in truly remote places, I would like for the generator not to be a critical component for us to make water. Right? So right
that
now,
if it breaks, we could have a perfectly good water maker, but no way to use it.
But no way to supply it power, right? Because that is the only way that we can get 220 volt power. So I would like to, before we cross the Pacific, get a different engine on the high pressure pump that goes to the water maker, so that it's just one less thing, one less component, one less thing to break to make water. So I'm gonna like even more solar. I'm gonna put an arch over the davits, the dinghy davits, for more solar for those things, and also for rainy days. But although you don't draw solar on rainy days, so mostly just for more power.
I guess you get some solar on rainy days.
You do get some solar on rainy days, actually. Even on cloudy days, you get some solar. So
just not very much.
Not very much, and I think that we could put another 1,000 watts over the dinghy davits without too much trouble. I'd probably like to add, we have 1,000 amp hour lithium. I'd like to add maybe one more big battery, another 200 or even 300 amp hours. Just it's a little bit more cushion. And then I would like to get as more power out of the alternators. So troubleshoot that, figure out why I'm not getting more out of the alternators. But overall, it's working great. I mean, we're living off grid. Anything you'd like more out of our power system? No?
Not
You need a
really.
fan in your room.
Well, I haven't since it's been windy. I can just open my hatch and it cools it right down.
Yes, that has been amazing. And the dock, felt like this air conditioning was absolute necessity, and now we get off the dock and out here, and
Nope.
I haven't even needed a fan in Kyron's room. Now it's going to get hotter, and we're going to keep moving south, but no, we'll get you a fan.
Good. I don't need it right now, but I will need it in the future.
Yes. All right. Good.